Welcome to Life Stories, where sometimes the loudest screams come from the people who never raise their voice. Imagine being erased by your own family, not just ignored, but cut out of photos, denied credit for everything you built, and then called back only when they needed saving. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about survival, about what happens when a quiet girl no one believed in finally finds proof, not just of betrayal, but of her worth. What would you do if you found out your sister stole your life's work and your mother hid the only letter that could have saved you? Stay with us, because this story will take you from a silent walk out the door to a voice the world could no longer ignore. And it all began on the night the phone rang 14 times, and she still didn't answer. It had been exactly 13 days since Elena Monroe walked out of the house her name was no longer spoken in. The door hadn't slammed. That would have implied drama, rage. No, she'd closed it gently, almost reverently, like sealing a casket. She carried nothing but a worn canvas bag, a phone at 6% battery, and a silence so complete it rang in her ears louder than her sister's last words. "You've ruined our lives." Their parents had nodded. Not argued, not questioned. Just nodded, as if Elena had been a curse they had finally named. That morning, the sky above Austin was dull and metallic, heavy with the kind of humidity that makes everything feel like it's waiting to break. Alina sat alone in a secondhand cafe just off South Congress. The booth's red vinyl seat stuck to the back of her thighs, and her chipped mug of lukewarm coffee trembled every time the AC stuttered back to life. The Wi-Fi was slow. The music was a strange loop of 90s alt-rock. But none of that mattered, because today, her phone had lit up with 14 missed calls. She hadn't heard from any of them since the day she disappeared. Not her mother, Diane, whose silence was always sharper than words. Not her sister, Marissa, whose life sparkled through every curated live stream. Not even her father, Rick, who had perfected the art of looking away. But now suddenly they needed her. Why? She didn't answer. She didn't even listen to the voicemails. Instead, she stared at the screen like it was lying to her, like it had glitched and pulled data from someone else's heartbreak. The last time they spoke, Elena had stood quietly in the threshold of the living room, holding a mug of reheated tea she no longer remembered making. Marissa was basking in the glow of a ring light, finishing a live stream about hitting 50,000 followers. An influencer milestone that her parents treated as a spiritual achievement. Elena's name wasn't mentioned. Not once. Then came the flicker. Her sister's laptop froze, a flickering glitch mid-broadcast. Marissa's voice snapped. Not now. Not when she's here. She turned to Elena, her smile gone, replaced with a glare sharpened by entitlement. Why do things always break when you're around? Elena blinked. What? You stress me out, just by existing, Marissa spat. You throw off the whole vibe. Diane rose, brushing phantom lint off her lap. She's not wrong, she said with stunning calm. You have a way of darkening a room. You always have. Rick didn't say anything. He just rubbed the bridge of his nose like he was watching an old movie he was tired of pretending to enjoy. Elena had felt the heat rise up her neck, that paralyzing burn of injustice with no place to go. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't cried. She just left. Now, in that booth in a forgotten corner of Austin, the weight of what hadn't been said pressed harder than ever. Not one of them had asked where she'd gone. Not one had followed. Not one had opened the envelope she'd left behind. It had been her mother's birthday. Elena had saved up for weeks to buy a gift card to Diane's favorite cafe, the one where they used to get cinnamon rolls every Tuesday, back before Marissa became the axis of the family universe. The card had come with a letter, handwritten, honest, pleading for a second chance. She found out later it had never been opened. The envelope had sat beneath a pile of expired coupons in a kitchen drawer, like a ghost too polite to haunt. And now, 14 missed calls. Elena's hands curled around her mug, the ceramic groaning under her grip. She was about to swipe the notifications away when the door to the cafe swung open and someone stepped in. Familiar posture. Familiar eyes. Jenna. Elena hadn't seen her in over a year. Once her closest friend, then nothing. Distance. Vanishing. A silence that mirrored everything else. Jenna looked around, spotted her, hesitated, then approached the booth slowly, like stepping into holy ground she no longer had permission to enter. "I didn't think you'd be here," she said. Her voice was quiet, careful. "I live 3 blocks away now," Elena replied. "Sometimes I pretend the coffee's good." Jenna didn't smile. She looked pale, tired, haunted. "I found something," she said, and placed a small envelope on the table. A cream one, familiar, untouched. Elena stared, her throat clenched, her handwriting, her seal. "It was in your mom's desk," Jenna whispered, "under a stack of flyers. I wasn't snooping, I was just dropping off something for Marissa. Diane left me waiting, and I saw it." Elena didn't reach for it. She just stared at it, like it might burn her fingers, like it might be empty after all. "That's not all," Jenna continued. She slid a printed sheet across the table. "Marissa's new academy site, the branding, the curriculum, the diagnostic tools." Jenna's voice dropped. "Elena, it's yours. Every word, every rubric. She didn't even bother to change the layout." Elena laughed, a brittle, shocked sound that cracked like thin ice. "Even the headers? Even the sidebars?" Silence. Then Elena finally picked up the envelope. It was still sealed, still whole, still waiting. And inside was the letter she'd written last year, believing somehow that words had power, that a daughter's voice still mattered. But she had been mistaken. The betrayal was no longer a question of love. It was about theft, of voice, of space, of memory. She looked at Jenna. "Why now?" Jenna's voice trembled. "Because they're saying you hacked her. Because they're spinning the story, and people are buying it." Elena exhaled slowly, her fingers steady as she picked up her phone. She opened her notes app, typed a single sentence. "They only ever remember me when they need something I built." Have you ever been blamed for the fire and then asked to put it out? Have you ever been erased by the people who raised you and told to apologize for noticing? The next morning, Elena didn't run. She didn't hide. She opened the file labeled grandmalegal.pdf, and everything began to shift. The scanned file was old, grainy, a little crooked, like someone had shoved it haphazardly into the printer and hit scan without thinking twice. But it was real. Her grandmother's signature, firm, looping, familiar, anchored the bottom of the document like it was still holding Elena's hand from beyond the grave. All educational materials, curriculum, and intellectual content created in whole or in part by Elena Monroe shall remain under her sole ownership as designated by Eleanor T. Monroe, witnessed and notarized. The words didn't scream. They didn't shout justice. But they hummed with something steadier, protection. Love, quiet and legal. Proof that someone had seen her, protected her, even if no one else had. Elena stared at the clause until her coffee went cold again. Her grandmother had known, and her mother had buried it. 3 days after the funeral, Elena had asked Diane if there was a second letter. A family friend had mentioned one, said it was beautiful, said it offered peace. Diane had blinked once, then turned back to unloading groceries. "It was just sweet old lady stuff," she'd said flatly. "Nothing important." But now Elena knew the truth. The letter had existed. The will had existed. The gift of ownership, of identity, of intellectual worth had always existed. It had simply been locked in a drawer by the very people who swore they wanted what was best for her. A week later, the first email arrived. Subject: urgent, copyright infringement claim, account suspended. Elena's hand froze on her trackpad. Her website, the one she'd built to offer test prep and writing workshops, the one she'd grown from a single cafe outlet and borrowed Chromebook, had been flagged, suspended, for allegedly misusing proprietary content. She didn't even need to ask who filed it. Margot, her lawyer, confirmed it within the hour. The IP address traced back to a branding agency in Chicago, the same one Marissa had used to launch Elevate Pathways, her glittery, fraudulent coaching empire. It wasn't just personal now. It was strategic. A legal ambush. "They want to bury you before your truth gets louder," Margot said, her voice calm but grim. "They're betting you'll stay quiet." But Elena wasn't quiet anymore. She didn't scream. She didn't post cryptic Instagram captions. She documented every lesson plan, every annotated rubric, every time-stamped draft, screenshots, backup files, PDFs, even the email threads with her grandmother from years ago, when she was still mapping out how learning should feel, not just how it should score. She organized it all into a folder labeled, "They Forgot I Keep Receipts." Then she did something she never thought she'd do. She hit record. No makeup, no filters, no dramatics, just her voice. She read the will aloud, paragraph by paragraph, showed the signatures, the timelines, the overlaps, the theft, the erasure, and then the email, the one from Marissa's PR team that referred to her as unstable, bitter, and non-essential to the brand. She ended the video quietly. "They say silence is strength," Alina said, "but sometimes strength is speaking plainly when you have every reason to disappear." She uploaded it. No tags, no promotion, just the truth. By nightfall, it had been shared over 6,000 times. Teachers reposted it. Former clients commented. A blogger wrote a piece titled "The Sister Who Stayed Silent Until She Couldn't Anymore." Reddit threads unraveled Marissa's facade like pulled stitches. Even a former intern leaked design templates with Elena's original file names still visible. But the most shocking twist didn't come from the internet. It came in a manila envelope, hand-delivered by courier. No return address. Just one line in embossed font. Proposed settlement agreement, confidentiality required. They were offering her money. A lot of it. High six figures. The kind of amount that said, "We admit it, but you'll never make us say it out loud." All she had to do was sign, withdraw her claims, delete her video, stay silent. She didn't touch the pen. Instead, she stared at the document for a long time, longer than she expected, because the money would fix a lot: rent, debt, her future. But something deeper stirred, a voice older than her shame, her grandmother's voice. "You don't sell what they told you never existed." Elena stood up, walked to the tiny shredder in the corner of her apartment, and fed the contract through, one sheet at a time. The paper resisted at first, thick, expensive, but eventually it surrendered, just like the lie it was meant to protect. And then the voicemail came. Her mother's voice, soft this time. "We're sorry, Elena. We should have opened the letter. We should have seen you." But even as the words played, Elena didn't feel herself reaching toward them. Not like before. Because sorry wasn't the same as different. Because this time, she was the one who got to decide if the door stayed closed. Have you ever been offered everything you wanted, only to realize it was just another way to make you disappear again? The next chapter begins not with forgiveness, but with fire. Stay with me. The truth is just getting started. The sun was already falling behind the skyline of Austin, casting long golden streaks across the pavement, when Elena walked past the front gate of what used to be home. She wasn't planning to go in. She didn't even slow her steps at first. But the for sale sign caught her eye. Not because it was unexpected, but because someone had scrawled a shaky under contract across it in black permanent marker. Not printed, not typed, just messy and desperate, like someone didn't want to wait for the final sign to arrive. That felt about right. The Monroe house, once so obsessively curated by her mother, now looked oddly hollow, like a museum after hours. The rose bushes were overgrown. The porch light flickered faintly, and the big cream sectional inside the window? Still there, but covered in plastic. As if no one had sat on it since the day Elena left. She stood on the sidewalk a moment longer, unsure why she had come. Closure? Curiosity? Or maybe she realized she just wanted to see it empty, to confirm that the place that erased her could also be erased. Her phone buzzed. She didn't look. Not yet. The voicemail earlier that week had been the last of them, from Marissa. Tearful. Fractured. "They took the site down. Investors pulled out. Everyone's calling me a fraud. And you," her voice cracked, then steadied into a familiar bitterness, "you just watched it happen." Elena hadn't responded. She'd let the silence do what it always had. Speak for them. But now, standing there, she couldn't help remembering the hallway, the framed photos on the walls, the way she used to walk softly, as if her steps alone could upset the balance. And now those same walls? Blank. Empty hooks where memories used to be. That was the cost, she supposed. When you build a house on performance, it doesn't survive the truth. She turned to leave. "Elena?" The voice came from behind her. Soft. Tired. "Diane." Her mother stood at the edge of the lawn in a coat that looked too thin for the season, a cardboard box in her arms. Her lipstick was faded, her shoes mismatched. "I didn't expect you to come back," she said. "I didn't," Elena replied. They stood like that for a moment, the weight of years stretching between them like fog. "I wanted to return this," Diane said finally, lifting the box. "Your things, or what's left." Elena didn't reach for it. "Why now?" Diane looked down at her feet. "Because you were right, and I didn't want that to be the last thing between us." Elena almost laughed. "You mean truth?" Silence. Diane swallowed hard. "I don't know how to ask for forgiveness from someone I made disappear." "You don't," Elena said softly. "You accept that it might never come." She didn't say it to wound. She said it like you might say a weather report, neutral. Inevitable. Diane nodded, her eyes glassy. "There's a letter in there," she whispered. "The one from Mom. The one I said didn't matter." Elena didn't move. She didn't ask why it took this long. Because she knew. Sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't hate. It's fear. Fear that the person you silenced might speak, might stand, might not come back. She reached out, took the box. It was heavier than she expected. When she returned to her apartment that night, she sat on the floor, surrounded by the hum of the heater and the smell of peppermint tea. She opened the box slowly, one layer at a time. Old notebooks, a scarf, her childhood library card, and at the very bottom sealed in a soft blue envelope with her grandmother's handwriting. For Elena, when it's time. She read the letter in full this time. Her hands shook. "Sweetheart, if you're holding this, then I need you to know. I saw you. Not the version they needed. Not the one who stayed quiet. I saw you when no one else would. And you don't need to forgive them to move on. You just need to remember who you are. And build from there. Build what they couldn't imagine." There were no dramatic turns of phrase. No sentimental phrases. Just certainty. And it was the first time Elena felt herself breathe all the way in since she was a child. That night, she didn't post anything. She didn't tweet. She didn't go live. She lit a candle, sat in silence. Let herself grieve the version of her who had waited too long for someone else to say she mattered. Weeks passed. Elena's sight was reinstated, this time with legal documentation front and center. Her courses expanded. The scholarship fund in her grandmother's name grew, supported by dozens of donors, most of them strangers who had read her story or heard pieces of it and found themselves in the margins. She spoke at a local school that spring. Just one class. Nothing recorded. No hashtags. Just kids who didn't believe they were smart enough. She sat on the edge of the desk like her grandmother used to and told them what no one ever told her. You don't need permission to take up space. One girl came up after class. Quiet. Shoulders hunched. "My mom says I talk too loud," she whispered. Elena smiled. "Keep talking," she said. "Maybe one day your voice will save someone. Maybe it already has." That summer, she moved to a new place. Nothing grand, just a one-bedroom on the east side with sunlight in the kitchen and a desk near the window. She didn't hang the old family portraits. Instead, she framed three things: her grandmother's letter, the legal clause from the will, and a note from a student she once helped pass the GED. "You didn't just teach me, you believed me." That was enough. She never saw her sister again. Not in person. Marissa disappeared from social media soon after the scandal peaked. Rumors swirled. She'd moved. She'd started over. She'd joined some kind of corporate wellness retreat. But Elena never searched. Because the truth was, closure didn't come wrapped in apologies or perfect red bows. Sometimes it came in silence. And sometimes it came with knowing you'd survived what tried to erase you and then built something stronger in its place. What part of Elena's story stayed with you the most? Comment 100 if this story moved you. Where are you watching from? Share this story with someone who needs to remember their voice matters. Thank you for watching Life Stories.